Cybernation Uncensored.
Another episode of Tales from the Forlorn Dopes with your hosts, Cybersmily, who is me, and my co-host.
Wisdom, that's me. Greetings, programs.
So, yeah. Hey, Rob, how's it going?
Hey, Rob.
3 people are on.
Rob Mulligan's there. He's our host with Cybernation Uncensored. He's in the text chat, paying a visit,
which is always nice. So let's get started. As we do with most episodes, we start getting into the media of Cyberpunk, like what's happening and what's coming out. So recently, last week, the week before,
last week Netflix had their Geek Week thing. Yeah, where they gave us a glimpse of Edgerunner, and the Cyberpunk Edgerunner, based off a video game, but still set in Mike Pondsmith's universe. I like it. I think it looks very good. Some people are complaining about the animation style. I don't care that much about that. It's not too goofy, which is all I would have worried about. Looks like it's got plenty of action, plenty of good stuff. I like the character designs. What do you think?
Yeah, I like the imagery. Like you said, the animation. And again, for me, the story is more important than the animation, because I can watch semi good animation, but if the story isn't there, then you definitely.
Yeah, I mean, as long as the animation is competent. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, no worries. But yeah, as long as the animation is competent and fluid, then hey, let's go with it, right? I think my only critique is how they do speedwear and how fast he moved.
I mean, that could have been speeding bullet legs. We don't know.
True.
What's going on.
True. I mean, it's true. It's just. But then again, it's based off of the computer game and not the source material. So, and I'm definitely looking forward. I was hoping, 2.5 years ago when they mentioned, hey, Edgerunners is going to be here and it's going to come out in mid 2022, that I thought we were going to get the series at this time, but apparently we're getting just a teaser, and we have to wait until September. So,
well, I mean, that's still this year. It's not like I'm okay with waiting till September. I'm okay with that.
Yep.
They're not putting it off like by years or anything like that. We'll get it before we get the real update for 2077. Hopefully it'll renew interest in the game, because I want that game. I want sequels to that game.
Yep.
Hell, I want prequels to that game. I want a game set in the 2020 universe. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but I want more.
Yep. And I think before September, we're definitely going to get a few more things that are coming out. Like Westworld is coming out June 26th, so that's less than 2 weeks for season.
That's very exciting.
4 on HBO. Also on Netflix is Spriggan, who
I'm so excited for Spriggan. It hurts.
It looks cyberpunk, but if it has aliens, then technically it's not.
It's not so much that it has aliens as it has like religious themes.
Oh.
Like Like the movie, they were hunting. They were trying to gain control of Noah's Ark.
Oh.
But up until the very end, when they actually enter Noah's Ark, it was fucking ridiculously cyberpunk. I mean, they're fighting dudes with like prosthetic limbs and like monowire coming out of their hands and shit like that. It was epic.
Yeah.
It's so no, the show's not going to be strictly cyberpunk, but if you can handle watching Akira, you can handle watching Spriggan.
Right.
A lot of the same people involved, so yeah, there's nothing really I'm going to complain about.
Yeah, and that's coming out.
The character designs also are faithful.
Supposedly that's coming out this weekend too on Netflix.
Supposedly, I'm watching very closely. I finally got around to watching some of the new Ghost in the Shell. Yeah. I'm about halfway through the series. There's a lot more episodes than I originally realized. It's a pretty long season. I've been enjoying it so far. They kind of kept the Purin stuff to a minimum. I'm not going to give out any spoilers. The last episode I watched was all about Togusa, though, and it didn't make any sense to me at all. So hopefully, at some point, it does make sense.
I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but continue watching. There's some good parts, and when you get to the finality, we'll definitely talk about that. Because I have questions, concerns, and comments. Other things that are supposedly or already out is a movie called Crimes of the Future. I haven't had too many details about this, but it's already released overseas, and it's very limited release in the United States. It looks interesting. So I definitely want to find out a little more about that. There's another movie called The Division, which is in the near future, a pandemic virus is spread via paper money on Black Friday.
Yeah, that's based off the Tom Clancy stuff. I liked the games. I liked the Division games 1 and 2.
Yeah. And I noticed that Tom Clancy.
Go ahead.
Tom Clancy. Some of his novels are very cyberpunk. It's near future, one step further technology-wise of now, right? Like I know he had what was it called? Damn it! I read all the books. It was cyber. But basically, it was
I don't know.
It was a U.S. department, government officials who went after cybercrime, but more terrorist cybercrime than anything.
Groovy.
Yeah,
I did not read those.
I gotta find it out. Like they just invented the quantum computers, so it was able to hack into everything. Well, of course, this was a novel at the time. Net Force. That's what the series was called.
Oh, I did read those. Yeah. Those are pretty good. It's been a long time, but yeah. I forgot he wrote those.
Yeah. So if you guys are looking for,
I was thinking Grisham wrote those.
Yeah. So if any of you listeners out there, go get Net Force. It's not cyberware, but very close near future or post future, as it were. But yeah, that was a good series.
I mean, even the Rainbow Six games have like some cyberpunk elements to them. Like those all take place, slightly in the future.
Yep. There's another movie supposedly coming out this year, or possibly has already come out, called Harmony. The description is
that looks pretty good.
In the near future, Sophia, a wounded soldier, discovers the medical facility she's been placed in is not for her and fellow soldiers' recovery, but something far more devious. So, That kind of looks cyberpunky-ish. So Division, Westworld, Harmony, Spiderhead. Spiderhead kind of looks more of a corporate experiment. So it's a little more drama. It's with Chris Hemsworth. It's on Netflix. It's supposed to be a TV series, which I think it's out already. I gotta take a look, or it's coming out, but definitely something to check out. There's another movie, I think it's Italian. It's called Mondo Cane. Supposedly came out in 2021, but it's basically...
It's Mondo Cane.
Mondo Cane? Okay. Ghost town that no one dares to enter.
Musician.
Yeah, but I don't have too much information on it. Officially released in Canada. I don't think it's released yet in Canada or English. But basically it says, the ghost town, or Taranto is a ghost town that no one dares to enter. The poorest are left fighting for survival while gangs are competing for the territory. So, in the near future type of stuff.
Apparently, it's a remake of a movie from like 1962.
Yeah.
Or at least it's stealing the title from it, because that seemed to be like a mock documentary. Some Italian thing. Taboos of sex and religion. Yeah.
The other thing that's supposed to be coming out this year, they don't have a date of when it's going to be, nor do they have a place that it's going to be shown, but Judge Dredd Mega City 1, a TV series, is supposed to be coming out. Granted, you never know whether or not it is.
I mean, finding any real solid information about this is elusive.
I mean, Carl Urban is done with the boys right now, so he's free. So, would be nice.
He's done until the next season.
Yeah.
But yeah, I very much want Carl Urban to return. In fact, I think if he doesn't, it's going to negatively impact. Like, I don't care who they get, they're not going to be as cool as Carl Urban. Carl Urban is the dude. I mean, he's this generation's cyberpunk dude, and needs to be recognized as such. He is to cyberpunk what Rutger Hauer was to cyberpunk in the 90s.
Well, I think
80s and 90s.
He's Bruce Willis to the action films of the 90s. To cyberpunk.
I don't know about if he's Bruce Willis. Bruce Willis was kind of a giant headlining star, where Carl is just this dude who, like, he just comes out of nowhere and he gives these like amazing performances that he turns a movie that by all rights should be garbage into just a masterpiece. Like, he's never given a performance that I didn't thoroughly enjoy.
Yep.
That's why I said Rutger Hauer, because Rutger was also kind of underrated in that regard. Like, I would watch anything he did, but it always came in under the radar.
Yep.
I remember going to the theater and Split Second, like, just came out of nowhere. It was just there in the theater, and like, whoa, there's a Rutger Hauer film. Let's go see that. Like, there was no advertising for it. I had no idea what it was. And I walked out of the theater going like, oh my God, that was, yeah.
Or a hobo with a shotgun.
Hobo with a shotgun. I mean, yeah, Rutger Hauer was the tits. Wedlock or Deadlock, I never can remember what that was actually called. But Blood of Heroes. Yeah, the guy was just amazing.
Yeah, he was. We lost a good actor. Other things that are coming out is Moonhaven on AMC. It's a story 100 years in the future about a smuggler from Luna, which ties into the subject we're going to be talking about tonight. It's starring, what's his name? Joe Manganiello? Mr. D&D?
It may have been the best butchering of a name I've heard since
Manganiello.
Bumbersnatch Cumberlick.
Good old Joe. You know Joe.
Good old Joe.
So that looks interesting from a space cyberpunk type of point of view. And then there's also Eon Flux is supposed to be coming out in Paramount Plus. A live action version of that. So,
Why?
Because
I mean, I make no bones about it. I was never like when it was on MTV. It was something to watch on the weekends. It was probably the best of the bunch on Liquid Television. Although The Running Man was far cooler. I don't know. I didn't ever care for the art style. I liked the weirdness of it, but
well, it had that.
Yeah, Eon Flux never grabbed me.
That European comic of future, right? So it's kind of of that style of comics, which yes, it was very weird.
I mean, I like the studio that does it, and I've liked everything else they did, but and I liked the overall story of Eon Flux, but then they do these weird angles, and they'd elongate all the limbs, and it just kind of turned me off of the whole thing.
Well,
plus the whole, like, licking eyeballs thing was kind of the hell.
well, this is actually
I'm not one to
be
get squeamish, but that one...
This is actually going to be a live action for you, so...
Yeah, we've had that once before already with Charlize Theron, and it was not good.
Shut up. You cannot speak ill of Charlize.
I love Charlize. Presence. I do. But Eon Flux was... Oh, it was so bad. Like, there's a you've seen it. You just have put it out of your head. It was that bad. Trauma.
Listen, I can still watch it muted.
We're also getting an... Yeah, I mean, eye candy at the best. We're also getting another season of Love, Death, and Robots that I always bring with it some cyberpunk stuff.
Yeah, that actually came out.
Oh, is it out already?
Yeah.
Damn it, I get all focused on one thing and forget and don't notice anything else dropping.
Yeah, there's a lot of good episodes in it. I would classify just one of them being really a strict cyberpunk story, which was the Cyber Bear, the Cyber Grizzly.
That's awesome.
I won't spoil it, but it's definitely a cyberpunk game that you would inflict on your players.
Well, yeah, because that's the best way to do it.
Yes, and the Cyber Grizzly is always going to be fun to throw at a player. Yeah, and that's about it. The only one that's kind of a border to Cyberpunk, and we were discussing it prior to getting on stream, was Borderlands is coming out as well. And I saw the top 3 actresses who are going to be in it, and I was like, oh, this is probably going to be a good movie. Gina Gershon, Kate Blanchett, and Jamie Lee Curtis. So I was like, all right, you got me, you got me as a watcher.
Yeah, I mean, you got me interested. I don't know. You said that there was also gonna, like, Jack Black's gonna be in it.
Jack Black,
Bobby Lee, and
Kevin Hart. So
Kevin Hart. It's. I mean, Borderlands is such a weird fucking property that I don't know how well a movie is gonna work out for it. because it's so goofy. There's so much going on. I don't know if they're planning on using the lore that exists in the video games and trying to have these characters actually portray like the main protagonists from the video game. I don't know if that's what's going on. I do know that if you want to actually have the Borderlands experience in a movie, there's an old movie from the 80s called Space Hunter, and it stars a very young Molly Ringwald. It's Borderlands the movie. Like 30 years before the first Borderlands video game. They had to have watched it and their eyes just went like, that's what we want to do in this video game. Because it's that. It's totally that. Watch Space Hunter. You'll enjoy it.
Yep. So I haven't gotten into any new comics, or actually I was doing a little research, and damn it. So I saw Transmetropolitan.
Transmetropolitan?
Yes, I'm going to try to...
That's my favorite book of all time.
See if I can
beyond
pick those
comic
up.
books. I mean, just the best.
But there was another one that I saw on Kickstarter. That, and of course the Kickstarter already happened. But it piqued my interest in actually getting to the book, and I want to say it's Interface something or other. Let me see if I can find it up.
That's got my interest already, just from the name.
Yeah, it was Image Comics, I think, pushed it out or did something with them. The art looked amazing. I should have wrote it down. My age, I keep on forgetting that I should be writing shit down because I'm at that age of, oh yeah, fancy little thing, flashy. Oh, shoot.
While you're trying to figure that out, I'll mention that on the DC Comics side, Batman Beyond is still being a thing, and that's always a good read. Very cyberpunk if you like a little bit of superheroes in the mix. There's also Gotham. There's a whole Future State series from DC that it's on and off cyberpunk depending on which title you're reading. But the Future State Gotham is consistently cyberpunk, and it is like 20 years down the road or so from current DC events. Like, the timeline makes no sense in the DC universe. It never has. But yeah, you should check it out if you're into that kind of thing. Let's see, what else have I been picking up lately that you might not have heard of? If you're into the Nomad stuff, there's a series called Noctera. That's put out by, give me just one moment. That's put out by Image, I thought so. Basically the premise is kind of goofy, where the sun is gone, all these monsters are running around in the dark. But the comic itself is about truckers who smuggle people back and forth from cities trying to avoid these giant monsters. It's tangentially nomadish, post-apocalypse. The vehicles are really cool. As always, ignore the monsters, focus on the human story, and it's good stuff.
I found the name of it. Have you heard of Empty Zone? It's from 2015.
Empty Zone, yes, I have. That's
Jason Shaw Alexander.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why I was doing a search and I saw the art on this and I was like, wow, this looks something like I need to buy. But like I said, the Kickstarter is from the past. It's from 2015, so I know there's books already published out there on Amazon that I'm going to try to pick up and take a look at this, because it definitely has a nice gritty art to it.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's been a while since I read it, but I thoroughly enjoyed Empty Zone. On the Marvel side, kind of to parallel the Batman Beyond stuff, Spider-Man 2099 has got a new series. I always enjoyed that. I think that's actually the best designed Spider-Man costume out there. That's personal opinion.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Before we get started into so this particular episode and the majority of what we're going to be diving into is the supplements Near Orbit, which I've never read or have in my possession, but I know Derek does. So he's going to be doing most of the reviewing for that one. But there's a lot of copy paste, I think, that happened between that and Deep Space.
I mean, pretty much the whole book got copied into Deep Space. Like, the only things that didn't, I think, were some really inconsequential stuff. Yeah. Everything important is in Deep Space.
But before we get to that, I just want to say that I'm going to be releasing some new stuff to my site this weekend. 2 new things are going to be appearing on my site. One is a list of corporations for Cyberpunk 2020. I am going to continue to add to that list and try to get some of the red corporations in there, and also flag them as Cyberpunk Red, so that way you can do a lookup based upon that. And I'm also created a quick generator that a member of the Cyberpunk 2020 Reddit actually gave me a bunch of charts that I converted into an app. That user is Murdoch Adams from Reddit, and basically it's going to be a club generator for not only Cyberpunk 2020 but for Cyberpunk Red. So I plan on getting that deployed this weekend to my site, so check that out. Hopefully it's something useful for everyone who's out there. Also, I've done a little bit of redesign, so my site's going to look a little different, so hopefully you like the new look. Yeah. Got anything new with your...
That's awesome news.
Got any news for your site? Or
I'd like to say I do, but the truth is I'm just going to continue disappointing people. I'm trying. I'm doing what I can.
I need to take a long weekend and drive down there and start beating you with a stick.
Yeah, that would probably help. That would probably help. Couldn't hurt.
Well, wouldn't hurt me. Might hurt you.
That's true. That's true. If it's going to be effective, it'll probably hurt me quite a bit.
All right. So, anything else you want to chat before we do their deep dive?
No, I think I'm pretty good on. I think we've covered most of what's happened in the last 2 weeks. Yeah, let's jump right into some Deep Space and some Near Orbit.
Awesome. All right, so...
I mean, really...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we don't really have to talk about Near Orbit. I'll mention it in spaces as we talk about Deep Space, and we get to areas that, we're kind of... Everything important as far as information, like I said, from Near Orbit got put into Deep Space. And the things that didn't, they got improved on. So yeah, go right ahead. I'm sorry.
Yep. So I just wanted to get started with at least Deep Space, right? It was designed by Chris Young and Scott Hedrick. And I think the original ideas were probably from the authors of Near Orbit, which was Mike Pondsmith, David Ackerman, and Glenn Wildmuth. I probably butchered that name pretty badly, but and
Wildemuth? I don't know.
Yeah.
Wildmouth, something.
Wildmuth.
I think this is the only. I don't recognize. I can't recall anything else he did for R. Talsorian. So now that's just because I've got a horrible memory. He might have done fantastic work for them. It's just not coming to mind at the moment. If so, Mr. Wildemuth, I apologize in advance.
And the one thing that I did not know, and I just realized, and something I gotta search through this book, is to figure out what interior illustration Mike Pondsmith did. Because I have not ever seen him be flagged as an internal illustration. I'm thinking it's probably a map or something that's in here somewhere, but maybe if we get him on our show, we can grill him on it.
He is listed as an interior illustrator. I know which ones Harrison Fong did. I know which ones Chris Hockabout did, because their art style is, personal favorites of mine. But Mike Pondsmith.
I'm thinking it's probably
also T.K. Scott.
Some of the diagrams. But
is he listed on Deep Space as well? Because if so, that'll make this so much easier. He is. Oh Lord. Hello?
Hello, I'm here.
Okay, sorry, I heard something beep on my phone and then everything went silent.
Nah, I'm still here, man. All right, so let's dive into this, right? So, the first chapter is On the Edge of Space. And this kind of gets into what is currently happening in space and in the world. Who are some of the players in space as well, at least the major factions, and kind of gives you a little bit of history. Like, I don't know if Wisdom mentioned this, but we actually got into 2025 with this particular book, so this is a divergence from what happened with Stormfront. Not Stormfront, the Firestorm series, right? Which kind of...
Yeah, they kind of ignored this whole book with that. This came out well before the Firestorm books, but it takes place, as you said, in 2025, where they take place in 2022. So this is my timeline. This is the timeline I go with. You know me, I ignored the corporate wars.
Yeah, so I mean, you can actually use the history in this book up until the 2023, right? And again, the only reason why it gets to 2025 is because they mention the arrival of NASA on Jupiter and a joint JAV and NASA Saturn study set to launch. So,
yeah, as well as they're beginning to colonize Mars, just at the very preliminary stages.
Well, the colonization of Mars was actually quite earlier, right? It was, and even in the normal source books,
they talk about it in Near Orbit, but here it's a thing. Like, it's a thing that they're boots on the ground type situation.
Yeah. So the colony actually started in 2019. And the reason why I know that the Mars colony is completed in 2022 is because not only have I researched it here, but it actually talks about it in other source books. So my current homebrew campaign, the team is actually going, or at the end of the Ocean War, beginning of the Shadow War, and I've created some news items around this, and this is one of the news items that I actually created, specifically that Mars has completed their, NASA has completed their Mars station or colony, and are now hiring a bunch of people to go and fly to it. So there's that kind of side note to the players that things are going on in orbit, not only on the land with Militech and Arasaka, but I know with that series of Firestorm, it kind of concentrated on that, but I tried to make sure my players understood that there's other things happening in the world besides just a spat between two military corporations.
Yeah, it's a great big blue marble, and there's tons of stuff going on. Everything gets overshadowed for the Militech Arasaka thing. I never focused too much on that, to be honest. Like, they were obviously a thing in my games, but like conflict between them, it's all like in the background, behind the scenes stuff, or advertising. They like to jab each other on the media, but that's like open conflict just doesn't really happen in my games.
Yeah,
at least not between them.
In rereading Deep Space, right? So in this first chapter, they actually talk about the various factions of NASA, ESA, JAB, SRC, the corporation IEC. I think that's it.
Yep.
IEC, yeah. And then they talk about the corporation of Utopian Corporation, which is basically a corporation that was founded by a bunch of microtech, right? So a very strict technology, computers, programming company, and some of their engineers, scientists decided, hey, we're going to split off and head into orbit. I find it funny because you have the Elon Musks and other people who've made their money from computer technology. Yeah. Well, it's computer tech, the IT industry saying, hey, I want to start expanding into space. So I thought it's a very loose connection to the prophecy of Cyberpunk 2020 into the future, but
yeah.
I thought it was an interesting little thing that is kind of like a Nostradamus prediction from the 90s.
It's prophetic. It's one more instance of Cyberpunk 2020 or 2025 in this case being prophetic. They took a long, hard look at space technology and where it was going, and it took a very realistic approach to how they did this book. This book was years ahead of its time, and I think we could have seen a future a lot closer to it had we not shut down like NASA as far as like shuttle launches in the aughts. I think we could have seen a lot more, but we got what we got.
Well, I think from a space point of view, we're getting there, right? And yes, it's not so much government controlled, but now you have private corporations getting involved, right? Like SpaceX, right? So the whole concept of SpaceX becoming NASA's contractors to send shit up to space now, right?
Oh yeah, no, it's starting to look very similar to, the fiction portrayed here in this book.
Yep. Another good resource, especially in this first chapter, is there is a map of all the spaceports that exist on Earth. And you can look at those, and they're all classified by who owns them. So, what does NASA own? ESA, ESA, European Space
I'm
Agency.
thinking that's the art that Mike did. I'm thinking that he did the maps and the blueprints and the layout.
Yes, because it looks very computerized, graphic type of thing with pixelated.
I mean, this would have been, I think, when he started working with Microsoft. I don't know. They're very good looking, but at the same time, I can't. The other art styles are familiar enough to me from the other books that I recognize them. So I'm not really sure if this wasn't Mike. I'm not sure yet what he's done, or what he did in the book.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Netrunner map of the world. So if he's listed as an interior artist on the main book, then we know. But yeah, the chapter goes into all the various planets as well as some of the moons and the belt, and gives you actually a little bit of science around it, like the orbits, the rotation period, how big these things are, and really gets into quite a bit of detail. If you love science, there's a lot of science packed in here. The one thing that I don't think is necessarily accurate is the communication lags in minutes, because it talks about Pluto being 237 minutes. I could swear that Voyager 1 and Voyager 2, who is currently out of our solar system, has less lag time sending data to NASA. I could be wrong.
I mean, that may be true. But also keep in mind, this book was written in the 90s.
Where Voyager and Voyager 1 is just 10 years or...
Yeah, that information was not quite as readily available back then. And it was before the internet.
Oh, wait, no.
Was really a thing.
Sorry, Voyager 1 is 21 hours. I stand corrected.
Well, there you go. It takes a long time to send a signal back and forth.
Yeah. But if we can get to the speed of radio waves, it's just 21 hours to get out of our solar system.
That's pretty fast. It's very fast.
It's very fast, especially if there's a meteoroid or an asteroid in the way. But yeah, there's tons of science packed into this book, with various charts, descriptions. If you are a geek about science and space, this is a book you want to get. There hasn't been a lot... Well... So the other... I mean, when I compare about, like, space... Gaming in space... Traveler is often the go-to, right? Because that is the grandfather
that's
of
what everybody...
space RPGs. But Traveler did not even have anything about what Deep Space gets into. The only other role-playing game system that I can think of that had like a little bit more hard science was probably BattleTech. But they only had one supplement when it got into, and that was mostly space travel. It didn't talk about actual living in space, but they got into a lot of the science around space travel. But this book is, you can not only use it for Cyberpunk, but any system that you're looking to understand space and and the environment of space, this is a book I think you should have for any system.
I mean, it's a very hard, realistic look at both travel in space and life in space that, like you said, I've never seen any other supplement come close to this level of detail for any other game. And I mean, you can always hand wave whatever if you want your game to, you know, be more relatable to people who don't care about the science. As with any, gaming supplement, there's that room there to, play it your way, and by all means do that. But for those who like the science, for those who want that hard environment and the math geek aspect of it, it's there. It's there for you to love and enjoy and nurture.
Yeah, and that's another thing about a lot of the Cyberpunk books, which other game systems might have done it. Some of them, I think, kind of glossed over it. But I remember hearing an interview with Mike was, when they put out a product, they did the research. They would actually call up, combat medics. Hey, if you get shot, what happens here? Or interviewing, astronomers,
astrophysicists, and they'd get the rundown. They'd get the skinny.
So, all right. So moving on to chapter 2, which is titled "The Environment of Space," and this actually gets into a lot of details about the hazards of space. And if you're looking for a lot of crunch around living in space, this is the chapter to go to. The one thing that really stood out to me about space and how deadly it is just the radiation section, and understanding that there is actually they have a table about how many rads, and the only other system I saw when it got into radiation was Twilight 2000 and talked about that. But this actually has a chart of, hey, rads are accumulative. They don't go away easily. So
yeah, they store themselves up in your balls. Sorry.
So
they definitely accumulate. They definitely build up in your system. And the more exposure you get, the worse the problems are going to be.
And this chapter actually gets into the bad effects of it. They get into mutations, but it's not mutations like Gamma World where you grow a third arm, but mutations of you're getting cancer, you're getting
tumors, you're getting an extra pinky or some shit. Not any of the mutations you want. It's all the mutations that are going to make it hard for you to get a date of prom. Or an extra bed at the hospital, maybe. That's what you'll get.
Yeah, so when it comes to crunch around radiation, this is a section you should read, and cyberware is not immune to radiation. So if you got a microwaver and you decide, hey, I want to start throwing or including rads in the microwaver, you can actually implement this in your game if you want.
I mean, honestly, the way metal absorbs radiation, having cybernetics in space really should double up on those rads. That would really suck for the game, though.
Yes. So there's always a balance, right? The next section in this chapter, it talks about gravity and why gravity is important to the body and how 0G can really screw up a person's body, and gets into some game mechanics around it as well. And again, that's
why in the game, any of the permanent structures or semi-permanent structures up in space, they're all like torus rings or some other realistically presented artificial gravity simulators.
Yep.
Because the body can't live without that shit. It just can't.
Yeah. And
not for any extended period of time.
Another great thing about this book is, hey, so you've been however long in space. This is what's going to happen when you try to get back into a gravity environment, and how it affects your body. So you're going to be weak when you get back to Earth. The next chapter...
Yeah, I mean, talk about like astronauts who've come down from ISS, like they've lost bone structure that they'll never get back, like bone density. They have to... They're almost toddlers as far as like walking around again. It's space. This book really sets into your head that space is the harshest environment you can survive in, where any little mistake can kill you and everyone around you.
And I'm glad they put it...
even if you don't make any mistakes, you're going to be fucked up by the end of it.
And I'm glad that they put that as the second chapter to stress, you know, as a reader,
this isn't Star Trek. This is
not high fantasies or space operas. This is cyberpunk, and cyberpunk is deadly. And guess what? So is space.
Yeah, cyberpunk in space doesn't get any better unless you're rich.
So the next chapter, chapter 3, is getting around the solar system. And this is one chapter for those who love gear porn. You're going to have quite a few things to look at in here. And they get into
good lord,
quite a bit of details of the various spacecrafts that exist, how to create spacecrafts, and some lessons in space travel as well. Costs to send up things. It really gets... I mean, it doesn't just get into spacecrafts, but it also gets into how to handle the spacecrafts in space, whether it's through combat, the dangers of flying in space, such as meteoroids hitting you, in the various hazards. So it's quite a well-written chapter. And the one great thing I like about this book is they condense so much knowledge in such little space and give you that information very quickly. Yes, some of it could be argued about, but they're very concise. I want to say good job to the authors, because I've read through this book and it's dense, like any science book.
Here.
But they cover a lot of stuff, and the crunch in here is... You shouldn't have too many questions when you're running a space campaign with this book.
It's also all very consistent within its own... Like, you don't have a rule over here that just doesn't make any sense in the context of the rules as a whole. Everything...
Well, unless you're an
everything works together.
Unless you're an astrophysic and knows some of the details of some of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean... Sure, if you're an expert at this stuff, you might be able to poke some inconsistencies with a stick and be all like, hey, look at this. But for the layman, or even for the... hell, I'll go as far as to say even for the hobbyist, this book is damn well done. And, yeah, if you value the science of space travel, again, this is the book for you. And I gotta say, I love the art in this chapter. I love the art throughout the whole book, but this is such an improvement over the images of spacecraft in this section are such an improvement over near orbit. It's like seeing it's like comparing the Chrome 1 vehicles that showed up in the Stormfront books or in Max Metal with Chromebook 1. It's that level of improvement.
Yeah. And just an FYI, everyone, most of the books we talk about when we're doing our broker reviews, a lot of these are still on ttrpg for a PDF version, and bless our Talsorian, because they still have a lot of these older books in print. So keep that in mind.
Even on DriveThruRPG, you can get print on demand. These books are available. They're reasonably priced. Like you said, either DriveThruRPG or rtalsorian.com.
Yeah, and looking at some of the images of these spacecraft, and even going, if you're a fan of, oh my god, my mind just slept. What's the space show that just happened?
The Expanse. I figure we'll talk about that later. Because there are lots of parallels to be made. But I want to couch the movie references as much as possible. Like, they're going to come no matter what. But yeah,
sure. Okay, we can do that.
If you like The Expanse, you'll like this book.
Yep. So, again, chapter 3 gets into the ships, that gets into travel, to the point where you actually can learn about like how much fuel it takes to do burns and leaving orbit. They also have cargo costs as well as people travel, in hazards within space of just traveling. One thing that I don't think is well known, and this book actually educated me, and I actually looked a little bit more of this up, is the radiation belts around planets. I don't know if a lot of people know that, but apparently gravity likes to play with radiation. Put that out in space, which is scary.
Literally everything in space wants to kill you. It's like Australia without oxygen.
Yes. Oh,
that was for you, Mr. Morrell.
Yeah. So the chapter gets into a lot of that, specifically travel and how you can travel. And of course, if you do travel long distances, guess what? You're going to be thrown into brain dance, which is, I think, one of the main themes of Cyberpunk that I see a lot of.
Cryo sleep and brain dance. That's how that works, because you gotta keep things. Well, I mean, long distance space travel takes months to years, depending on where you're going. And you can't be expected to stay awake. Hell, you can't keep food that long.
Yeah, so did you actually use this book as like a help to boost your education into space, and actually kind of like, wow, I didn't know that, and yeah.
It was a jumping off point for me to learn more, because it's that well written that I was all like, this can't be accurate. Oh shit, that is accurate. Hell, we just had one of those moments 10 minutes ago when you looked up communication times.
True.
So yeah, this book definitely served as a springboard for me to further glimpse what realistic space travel is going to look like, what life in space would be. It made me glad that I did not pursue my childhood dreams of becoming an astronaut, because yeah, screw that. That's dangerous.
Please, that's fun. Did you see the astronauts? Yeah, the one thing I don't think this book that didn't get into is, and this is what I've heard from various people who've gone into space and been on the space station, is They don't tell you about bodily functions and smells that happen in space.
Yeah.
You can't open the window.
Yeah, I listened to Chris Hadfield, the Canadian.
Yep.
The Canadian rock star astronaut. I love that dude. But he was talking about the smells once, and he was like, man, I don't know that I'll ever be able to smell anything else. It just permeated everything.
Yeah, so it's space is not as clean as the space operas like to portray.
No, it'd have to be filthy and gross, and everything would, like, just, human nature. Like, you shed skin cells, so everything in that shuttle or in that space has to be like covered in a layer of just funk.
Yep. Moving along, we get into, and again, we're at about little less than half the book so far, and we're getting into chapter 4, which gets into equipment and weapons. So here you have the various spacesuits you need to wear. One great little chart is suit failure. That scares the crap out of me. Versus a slow leak versus a fast leak.
Should.
Versus everything else. But there's various versions of suits that you can wear. Some shelters that you can use. It also gets into the various vehicles that you would use on Luna or Mars. Various space hoppers and some tools. And again, some of this stuff can actually be used by your regular characters on the Earth. So you can look and use this book. It gets into the weapons, and one big thing about guns in space is they love flechettes.
Yeah, because they don't penetrate anything. They don't over-penetrate anyway.
Yes.
Little slivers are going to, crumble and disintegrate against a hard surface. Against soft surfaces, they're going to tear you up horribly.
Yep. There is also new cyberware, which I don't know a lot of referees will include some of this stuff, because, again, a lot of this stuff is from the content that is being created in 2025.
Plus, a lot of it is pretty specific to orbital life.
Yep.
A lot of it won't do you a lot of good on the surface. But if in your character's backstory he comes down, he is a former high rider, then yeah, I can see it happening. None of it's too ridiculous, except for the new skin weaves. Those are out there.
Some of the BioWare with like the reflex boosts, or the body.
I mean, it actually like states flat out that it adds to the stat and not just initiative, like most of the reflex wear in Cyberpunk 2020 does. So you can get a +2 to your actual reflex, and that's pretty significant.
Right. Yeah, so that kind of wraps up that chapter. And we're getting into chapter 5, which is artificial habitats. This actually gets...
Is where it really sets in what life in space would be like.
So far, what's the differences between deep space and near orbit? I'm sure deep space has more.
Most of it has just been art. I mean, near orbit, Near Orbit was a cursory glance at what deep space would become. It worked fine for what it was at the time when, they weren't trying to think about like long-term space trips. Really, it was more just satellites, like orbital satellites, and of course trips back and forth from Crystal Palace. This is expanded on that. But the rules are more streamlined, they're more thought out, but most of it is just improved art and expansions on what was already.
So Near Orbit actually got into a lot of the science as well.
It did, not as in depth, but like the burn times and all that. That's all there. That's all in Near Orbit.
Okay.
The actual harsh realities of like life in space. It's all there. This just expands on that.
Okay. So now we're getting into the artificial habitats, which basically is all the space stations, bases, orbital stations that currently exist in the Cyberpunk universe. I like a lot of this, and you can also see that in Cyberpunk 2077 as well, because spoiler, there's some endings that you end up in space. Whether it's on a habitat or traveling to Crystal Palace. But yeah, and I just love the details that they put it in. To the point where I love
the breakdown of the typical work shack. I love the way they open it up and give you that cross section of it. It's, I love that kind of stuff anyway. I love the grit and the technical layouts of stuff. That just works for me. I wish they'd given something like that for Crystal Palace itself. Crystal Palace, the art here is the art for Crystal Palace and the basic typical station layouts page. It's all carried over from Near Orbit. I would have liked to have seen Crystal Palace updated for this book. I understand why they didn't do it, but still. A layout of what the Taurus rings look like on the Crystal Palace would have been extremely welcome in my games, because I used Crystal Palace kind of extensively for a while.
Have you seen the map? I want to say, what was that company? I want to say it's something to do with Cthulhu, but I don't think it is. Writers Cthulhu, that's it. .com. If you go there, they created a map for Cyberpunk. They actually have quite a few maps, but one in which
the 3D map.
Yes,
I saw that. It's pretty good stuff.
They have other space stations like Johnson Space Platform.
There was a. Let me see if I can find it. I've talked about it in the past. There was I found on ttrpg a space station with the giant set of maps, and I can't remember what the name of it was, but it was fantastic. And it's what I used as my map for the Crystal Palace.
Right. The one visual that I loved, especially around the stations, was specifically
Argos
around
3.
The O'Neill colony.
That's the name. The O'Neill colony it's a bit too big to believe, for me to believe that they built that in 5 years. It's humongous, and it's cool as hell. Like, don't get me wrong, it's cool as hell. But I can't believe they built that in the limited time that we've got. I don't know how long it takes to build something in space, but it's enormous.
Well, when you get into automation and machines building other machines to build other machines, it can get replicated very quickly as long as you have the raw materials to do it. But yeah, I agree. To me, if you're looking for kind of a understanding of the O'Neill, is go watch Elysium with Matt Damon. Well, again, we're going to talk about those later in the thing, but there is Elysium that you want to go check out when it comes to those type of O'Neill systems. The crazy thing that I thought around this particular section is how they gave prices for some of this stuff, like Crystal Palace, at least 7 billion EB to make.
Yeah. Why bother giving a price for that? I mean, what the hell?
And even marking down, what the weapon suite is, makes you. And again, to me, this is reminiscent of from Dungeons and Dragons when they did the deities and demigods, and even in Call of Cthulhu, is if you stat something out, players are going to want to beat that or try to destroy it, because now you have stats associated with, so players are always going to think, oh, I can defeat this. Let me go build a particular spacecraft to go and blow up Crystal Palace or one of the O'Neill colonies.
But at the same time, like if you're running like a high-level military campaign, that info might come in handy.
True.
It certainly did in my game. But I am reminded of the KODT strip, where they find they're reading deities and demigods, and they're like they gave God stats and hit points. Let's go.
Yep. Yeah, so that's chapter 5. The next chapter is chapter 6, and that's living and working in space. And this chapter actually gets into the high riders culture and the people themselves, to the point where it gets into what makes up the ethnicity of the high riders, what their culture is all about, how they really don't do drugs or drink because that will kill you. Yeah, the slang was interesting too. The different types of, and to me this definitely reminiscent of the nomads and neo tribes, and the breakdown of the different roles that various high rider tribe members would be part of.
I mean, we're going to go ahead and talk about the Expanse for just a minute here, namely the Beltalora. Like, if you've watched the Expanse and paid attention to the Belters, like this is that kind of environment, that kind of society. In deep space and in near orbit, they make numerous mentions that the majority of the workforce in space comes from Africa, because they're using the Kilimanjaro lifts and spaceport to transport most of the labor and resources up into orbit.
Yep, and this book is actually good for Cyberpunk Red background when it comes to space. I know with the whole corporate war that space has kind of been cut off, but really,
it's still there.
It's still there. Africa from the Fourth Corporate War grew as a continent because it was not impacted by the Fourth Corporate War very seriously. So
no, and they probably saw the most peace during that when everybody's attention was on Europe and the United States, militarily. Like that probably took a lot of the pressure off of Africa and Asia,
so I
and
think
South America.
I think from a worldview, some of the red stuff doesn't really match with that, right? So Africa is also a spacefaring nation, or sorry, spacefaring continent. And to think that space suffered and deteriorated during the Fourth Corporate War and suffered drastically, I'm sure it did suffer because of the kill sats. But I also think that they have a better chance of recovery than Europe or United States or any of the other nations that the Fourth Corporate War was waged on.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, they're already talking about, you know, colonization on Mars. They got cut off, but at that point they'd be for the most part self-sustaining. By that time they'd have farms built, and their oxygen would be self-created by whatever trees or whatever plant life they had going. Probably a lot of moss and fungus and stuff like that. So I mean, there's still a spacer community at large out there, and they're gonna start, if they get cut off from Earth, they're definitely gonna start having their own factions and fidelities.
Yep. And the other thing,
that's a whole world that is ignored by Red.
Yeah, and in this chapter, you get into the High Rider's life. Some new skills are added to the system.
Yeah.
Pardon me. And then it gets into why would a cyberpunk character be in space, and kind of how a character life would be, which is also great. And then again, it gets back into the factions, specifically around the corporations that are really the spacefarers.
Yeah. It goes into some amount of detail on, you know, the corporations, what kind of influence they have, the kind of numbers they employ, and, you know, where their main influences lie. It's presented in a very straightforward manner. I love this book. I truly do.
So the last chapter, chapter 7, is Red Conflict: A Space Adventure. It is about 20 pages, more than that. It's like, well, actually, it's like almost 40 pages of a scenario. A little less than 40 pages, but still, that's a hefty scenario, especially for a supplementary book. I actually tried to run this back in the 90s. I had 2 sessions, and the group kind of fell apart due to real life issues. So technically, they had the intro, and they were about to head to space. I do not want to give any spoilers on this particular adventure, but it is very well written, in my opinion, for a cyberpunk adventure. And
here's where this and Near Orbit differ.
Mm-hmm.
Near Orbit actually provided a new character sheet for space characters. It's pretty simple. It's just a 1-page little thing. Cyberware and skills you have to write in by hand. They do list some groovy boxes, I guess that's stats. Like there's a stat for aggressiveness and one for competence. I like that. I wish I'd figured out a way to use those effectively and balanced in Interlock Unlimited. And the adventure that Near Orbit provides is called Child's Play.
Okay.
And it was really well written. I liked the characters in it. Right at the start of the adventure, the first thing you do is you get like a ball or a hacky sack or something, and just have your players toss it to each other while you're giving them like this description. To get used to, cause and effect, and I don't know. I just really liked that aspect. That
Did you actually?
I like props.
Did you run that scenario back in the day?
I ran parts of it. It's very rare that I run a scenario as written. Like, it's almost unheard of. The only one I ever really tried to do like that was some of the stuff out of Forlorn Hope, and of course Land of the Free. I ran that as written. But anytime else, any other time I come across a scenario or a written adventure, I just take the parts that I like and add them into whatever I'm doing at the time. And that's what I did with this. And I ran a couple of I ran a campaign that took place on the Crystal Palace, and then I had several other campaigns that, for whatever reason, characters would have to travel up here. I can get into that in a bit.
Why the hell didn't we live closer together when we were growing
up? You would have been very welcome at my table.
I would have loved to have been at your table. Some of the scenarios you've described over the years is just, man. But
the most memorable one, I don't know. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
Right now, I'm going to say that both of these adventures are really well written. The Near Orbit adventure is very much, you just go to Crystal Palace and do some stuff there, and then float around the place, and then that's it.
Yep.
It's a very simple way to introduce you to the idea of life in space.
Yep. And the reason why I like the near or Deep Space one is they really get into a lot of the background of the NPCs. And here's one spoiler about the whole adventure: is you're there to cause a revolution on the colony, the Mars colony. Which, kudos, right? That's all about the High Riders' independence, and really plays into the history of Cyberpunk with the High Riders. And again, one of the things that I loved was, and this was something that I didn't see up until here specifically with Adventures, is I have always been a big Netrunner fan with the old system. I know a lot of DMs have always shied away from it, but my group kind of embraced it and didn't mind having the Netrunner go off for half an hour as we all chilled, either watched TV or did something else, because the gaming areas that we lived in were basically each other's houses. So, hey, yeah, you guys want to go do that thing? Fine, we'll discuss the game or discuss our plans while you guys go off and do that. Maybe watch a little TV or just bullshit, right? We didn't.
Old Dragon.
Never got really bored. Then again, we were, teenagers at the time, so teenagers always have a way of just finding something better to do while you wait. But just the complexity of some of these data forts I just loved, because it really got into, hey, these are the various cameras, and this is the section it monitors, and the auto factories and the terminals, and really fleshed out the data forts beyond just the quick little, okay, this is just data fort, go and take these files and you're done. Which I always appreciate.
It really gets into like describing what they look like and how they react to you. It's outside of Raish Bartmos's Guide to the Net. This is the best presented version of the classic 2020 internet interface and how it would work and how net running is supposed to feel.
Yep.
Like the book may be worth it if you really like that old school feel. If you were really a fan of net running as originally written, you're going to want to at least give this book a look just for that.
Yep. And of course, the last section of this book is not only a girl floating in 0G who has a very skin-tight outfit. They actually get into the various references to go and take a look at. And it's not just novels, but they also get into actual science, right? So they tell you, hey, go read Scientific America magazine from this year to this year, this year to this year. Issues of Sky and Telescope magazine. So it does not just say, hey, here's a bunch of science fiction to go read. It actually tells you, like, foundations of astronomy. So
I like that they've got the Encyclopedia of Space, which sadly I had to give away when I moved out of my house. I had to give away that and the Illustrated Guide to Space Warfare, the Space Traveler's Handbook, and Cosmos.
Yeah, I mean, they
all are listed on here. I was very sad to see those go.
I'm actually looking at this list and I'm like, there really isn't any sci-fi.
No,
books.
it's all
it's all science books.
It's all straight science. Like they're not fucking around with, hey, go watch this movie. They're like, hey, go read this book and it'll teach you something.
That's nice. I appreciate that. Yeah,
the last page on Near Orbit is actually some Crystal Palace interiors.
Oh, really?
They're just 3 little sections. One of them is literally just outlines of buildings on one of the Taurus rings. But like I said, I would have liked to have seen this expanded for Deep Space, and I was really sad that it wasn't. That is my one and only complaint about Deep Space, is that they didn't give us better maps of Crystal Palace. So that in and of itself, that and the adventure are really the only things missing. And depending on how anal retentive you are, it could still be worth picking up, even if you have Deep Space, just so you can compare and just so you can have this tiny bit of missing content. Although the adventure is like 20 pages long, so it's not like it's that tiny.
Yep. Yeah, I actually, one of my friends still has his 2013 book, or sorry, box set, because it wasn't a book, it was a box set. He actually loaned it.
Orbit
is
actually a 2013 book, so it's got the rules. The rules are slightly different to compensate for that.
And again, it's been decades since I played 2013, but just having him give me those books and just flipping through them, really showed me the differences between 2020 and 2013.
Oh, it's wild.
Even the Night City book, or the Night City map, was different between the two. And granted, it's even more different when you get into Red.
Well, I mean, I love my 2013 box sets. I do. I've got the cover as a T-shirt. It's my favorite T-shirt, even more so than my 2020 cover T-shirt. But like the original books, they're just printed on. They're glorified pamphlets.
Yeah.
In this gorgeous box. They're all like black and white, like just paper pamphlets with. It's really a weird contrast to look at in comparison to 2020, which is this beautiful bound book and all that.
Yeah.
What a difference a year, 2 years makes.
Yep. Yeah, and when he gave me his box set, he had a bunch of other stuff in there, right? Because it's a box, and it definitely fits the three. So you're gonna shove a bunch of other books in there. And I pulled out a mint condition Green Wars from Atlas Games. I'm like, dude, my version, of course, is scraped and beaten because I ran it a couple times. But just seeing that, I'm like, dude, you got bank on this book because they're not even printed in drive-through-RPG anymore. So, and I know it's a great scenario for those who are looking for old scenarios. Green Wars, I always loved as a scenario pamphlet.
It's a good book. In one of my box sets, I keep Punisher from Marvel Comics in the 90s had this series called Punisher Armory. And it basically is just a detailed look at all the various weapons and gear Punisher uses, and it ran for like 10 issues.
Yeah.
I keep the entire run of that in there. I keep the Scout Handbook from the Scout comic book by Tim Truman, put out by Eclipse Books. I forget. There was another comic book gear guide type thing that basically were comics putting out role-playing supplements without realizing it. And then I keep all the interface magazines and all the in another box I keep all the interface magazines, the Punk 21s, and the other fanzines that I've found.
Cool.
So yeah, we cram our boxes full of stuff. We don't just let them sit.
All right, so let's get into inspirations or resources to use when you're planning out a deep space campaign or near orbit, or for Cyberpunk Red, supposedly there's going to be a High Riders supplement coming out. So
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
I'm hoping it's an actual book, not just like some web stuff, because it deserves to be. I mean, we've mentioned The Expanse several times, and I think that's the most obvious one that people are going to understand.
Yep.
If you want to play The Expanse, this is the book you want. Beyond any other, beyond Traveler, beyond... Oh, really, I can't think of any other book other than Traveler that would come close. As I said earlier, the Beltalowda community and the High Rider community, it wouldn't surprise me at all to find out that whoever wrote The Expanse, I can't remember the author's name at the moment, but if he didn't play Cyberpunk 2020 and use Deep Space as his inspiration, like, that wouldn't surprise me if that information came out at all.
Yep. Another great movie to watch, and it's an old one, and I think it's watchable today, is Outland with Sean Connery. Yeah,
Outland is... When I first... I first saw the movie and I read this book at about the same time. I want to say within like maybe a month of each other. I saw the movie and then I got the book and I was like, holy shit, I can play that campaign. I mean, Outlander still has the problem of, the problem with any...
Not Outlander,
is
Outland.
Or Outland. Yeah, my bad. Outlander is something completely different. But Outland still has the problem that actual space travel in and of itself isn't realistic. But everything else is realistic. They get anti-gravity right. They get living on
the moon,
an alien surface. I don't want to say alien, but yeah, living on a moon or on a colony, they get that right. It's done really well, especially for something that was really just kind of an action role for Sean Connery in the early '90s. It's just something he was kind of coasting along on.
Was it the early 90s, or I thought it happened in the 80s?
It might have been. I saw it in the early 90s. It might have been late 80s.
Because it came out soon after Aliens. Yeah, 81.
Yeah, it had that same kind of vibe. Like, I think they shared some of the same sets. And I said they get anti-gravity right. They didn't. I kind of lied about that. Like, they're on an asteroid and they've got artificial gravity and whatnot. But
actually, it takes place on one of the moons of Jupiter, Io.
Does it? I thought it took place on an asteroid, like, orbiting it.
Federal marshals stationed at the mining colony on Jupiter moon of Io uncovers a drug smuggling conspiracy.
Huh. I need to watch it again, because I could have sworn that...
I haven't watched it in a while, and I want to watch it again, because it's definitely...
fantastic.
It's a great movie.
It's a great movie, you're right. It's a fun watch. It wasn't quite as realistic as 2001 in their depiction of life in space, but it's probably the closest. At the time, it was I would have put it number 2 behind 2001.
Yeah.
They still overlook some stuff for the sake of movie making and budget, because you kind of have to. Help. The Expanse does it. But for the time it was made and the budget it had, it's top notch in that regard.
And to me, it had a blend of not only the Alien, but Blade Runner as well. So, FYI, spoiler here. Basically, it's a guy who is sent to this, like I said, mining community on Io. He basically is part of the law enforcement. However, the whole mining complex is run by a corporation. He is the lawman, so he tries to break up a drug conspiracy where drugs are being fed into the workers to make them work more, to produce more for the company, and the company wants this racket to continue on. Yeah. And basically Sean Connery is fighting the corporation
with a Scottish accent.
Yeah, and he has he has very little support from anyone on the station. So it's definitely a must watch if you're getting into deep space with Cyberpunk.
Absolutely, it is required viewing. There's another. I want to mention an anime series called Planets. It is about a salvage, space salvage. They clean up all the satellites in Earth orbit, and beyond 2001, beyond the Expanse, beyond anything else, they get space 100% right. Like, they've been praised about it. It's not an action-packed anime. It's a very deep and technical anime, and I highly recommend it for anyone who's thinking about running a deep space game.
How do you spell that?
Especially one Planetes. There might be 2 T's. It's been a while since I watched it, but
it looks like it's just one.
It's based on a manga. The manga is also a phenomenal read. Yeah. It's the most realistic depiction of life in space that I've ever seen.
Years 2075. So this came out in 2003 to 2004. So it's actually a series. Yeah, I'll definitely see if I can get to it.
I cannot recommend it highly enough. Obviously, watch 2001. You can also watch 2010, which I can only recommend for the performance of John Lithgow, and that's pretty much it.
Another movie definitely is more cyberpunkish is Elysium. I think is one of the more recent ones. Because you have
there's no. Go ahead.
Because you have the first depiction of a linear frame installed into a person, which I kind of love.
And the most realistic depiction of that, like, it looked painful and awful, and like there was nothing pleasant about that stuff. It was fantastically well presented. It also gives you a look at, the rich and wealthy living in space while the people on Earth live in squalor. Some are better off than others, but they're still living in a polluted environment, surrounded by filth.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that in Cyberpunk 2020 and even Cyberpunk Red kind of glossed over of really the rich, and you can see it today, right? Our rich and most powerful people are trying to get into space. Which,
I mean, there's always that disconnect.
Yeah.
Hell, before I moved here, I lived in Kansas City, and I lived in the absolute worst neighborhood in Kansas City at the time when Kansas City was the murder capital of the United States. I lived on Troost and Paseo, and literally a block away was a gated, like, ultra wealthy community. It was like, when you're driving past it, the change is ridiculous. Like, filthy, like, refuse-ridden streets with, the lost and hopeless just wandering around, gangbangers driving up and down the street, and then you, like, pass this, like, invisible barrier, and everything's suddenly clean and fresh and brand new, and the police are driving in shiny police cars, and that's the kind of disconnect that you see in Cyberpunk, though. Like, the garbage butts up against the elite.
Yeah.
I am, and we are the garbage.
Another good movie I kind of relate to Cyberpunk, but it's borderline, is Moon with Sam Rockwell.
Yeah.
The cloning.
Alien? The original?
Alien, yeah.
I mean, once you get past the xenomorph, it's a pretty good look at space travel and how living in space works with each other. There are definitely some miserable bastards.
Plus, aliens gave you certain looks of weapons that are in Cyberpunk.
Yeah. Event Horizon.
That's more horror. I mean, yes.
Well, it's alien, but once you get to the terrifying aspects of the movie, it becomes a completely different beast. But up until that point, like the space travel itself is presented pretty realistically. I like all the stuff that happens in 0G. Like, it's the first movie to show you what fire would look like in 0G, and that's pretty amazing.
True.
And terrifying.
There was another movie that came out in the late 70s, early 80s. I'm trying to find it on IMDb. That also had a kind of space settlement. I want to say that the actor Harry Dean Stanton was in it.
Stanton,
sorry.
I think I know what you're talking about.
He had like robots who helped him, and he was basically alone.
I know exactly what you're talking about. It's what the hell is the name of it?
But it occurred around there.
The AI on the ship, it keeps lying to him.
Yeah. Anyways, I'll keep on researching it, but for now, yeah, there was that movie.
Harry Dean.
Then who was it?
Oh Lord, this is gonna drive me insane.
Us old timer geeks geeking out on sci-fi movies of the late 70s. I thought it was Stan.
No, Stanton was in Aliens.
I know he was, but I thought he he's in Aliens, therefore, hey, we're gonna put him in this movie too, to ride the coast. But anyways, yeah. So when you're looking for resources, especially with cyberpunkish type of things, you in space, you really want to try to get more to the hardcore science rather than getting into some of the space opera stuff. Oh, Dark Star. That was actually a good one too.
Dark Star is awesome. That's Carpenter's first movie.
Yeah. 1974.
That movie's hilarious. I want to surf through space. I like the fact that the monster in it was just a trash bag. That's all it was.
Well, again, it was his first movie and probably had absolutely little or no budget.
Yeah, I mean, he used his lunch money to pay for it. But it's still fucking hilarious. It comes across like a trauma film.
There it is.
It really does.
You're right. It wasn't Stanton. Bruce Dern. Silent Running.
There you go. That's the one. Silent Running. Yeah, that movie will teach you the extent of loneliness and isolation and desperation.
Yeah, so I can't think of any more recent movies. I want to say there definitely is, that really had a lot more hard science.
But they get overshadowed by all the science fantasy.
Yeah. Yeah, like The Martian. Duh.
Yeah, The Martian. The Martian was really good.
Gravity was also another one.
What was the one with Val Kilmer on Mars? That was pretty good.
Yeah, there was 2 Mars ones that came out kind of close together. One was, hey, aliens, which I just don't care for. And there was another one,
Red Planet.
Yes, that came out at the same time. So I don't know if it was Red Planet or that other one with John Cheeto. Red Planet was with Val Kilmer, and that's where he died and like sacrificed himself. Yeah, that was a pretty good movie. A lot more hard science than fantasy science.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, Val Kilmer, love him or hate him, he can't give a bad performance. Like, he's just incapable of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel bad for him recently.
Yeah, he's had some problems.
But they're finding the technology to give him his voice back, so
give him his voice on back, that. Yeah.
Cyberpunk, the Cyberpunk world is now. Which they're actually giving his voice to him. So I think that's awesome.
I do too.
I mean, Blade Runner kind of referenced Off-World, but really never got into it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Outland is a better sequel to the Blade Runner, or a better offshoot to the Blade Runner mythos than Soldier is. I know Soldier is like a spiritual successor, but I think Outland was a lot closer to what was going on.
Yep. Yeah, so I'm doing a lookup of hard science. Yeah, gravity, we talked about.
I mean, there's more books than we can list.
Wally! He was definitely cyberpunk.
I would have never.
It's a fun.
Never thought of Wally, but I can't argue that point.
It's a fun, comical cyberpunk, but it's definitely cyberpunk. Solaris kind of was. I think it was a little too dramatic for my taste, but.
I mean, I kind of want to mention. What was it?
Well, you're thinking of that. Interstellar. That actually was very hard science, getting to the edge of the universe.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of spoiler, basically. A guy's looking for his father, who is a space explorer, and just really getting to the edge of our solar system. And it was great because it showed the progressive of, hey, you're getting out to the frontier. There's very little resources out here, and you're going to keep on trying. And okay, you have this ship that if you burn all your fuel, you're not coming back. which was pretty good.
There was a Katsuhiro Otomo anime called Memories.
Yes, Memories, yeah.
Where, a space salvage team in deep space comes across like a rogue satellite amidst a giant field of debris, and they got the science right on that one too. That was really good. It kind of turned into more of a psychological horror thriller towards the end, but it's definitely worth seeing just for the beautiful animation.
Yep. And going back to
the
beginning of the episode where we talk about upcoming stuff, Moonhaven might be another resource you can take a look at. All right, so we're pretty much close to time. So I think this was pretty interesting discussion about hard science, space in the cyberpunk universe. And I hope everyone who's listening found it entertaining or enlightening at the very least. I know I learned a couple things from our wonderful wisdom here. And
I learned a couple of things from
Yeah. So also we would like to thank Cyber Nation Uncensored for hosting us yet again. Appreciate all Rob's work for the community. I am Cybersmily. You can check out my site on cybersmily.net. Like I said, I'm going to be doing a new deployment or release this weekend with a couple of additions to my site. Please check it out. You can contact me through the email link there or ping me on Discord. I'm on a lot of different servers there. I'm actually going to have a Discord server specifically for my site that you can all go to, and by all means give me feedback on my site and tell me, hey, any bugs you might find, and also I will be posting what I'm doing with my site there as well.
I am Wisdom000. I run Datafortress2020, the largest, most comprehensive Cyberpunk 2020 database on Earth, or at least on the web. I can be reached on Facebook, on Discord. I kind of have really, you want to get me on Facebook. You can get me through the Facebook group, the Datafortress 2020 group, or the Cyberpunk 2020 group, or you can just message me directly. My name is Derek Bernier. As Smiley said, you can ask us questions or give us critiques, commentary through his Discord channel and that's about it. I think we're good for the day.
Yeah. Just like Wisdom said, we have a channel specifically on Cyber Nation Uncensored Discord that you can give us feedback if you want us to discuss a particular thing or get our insight on anything. We are more than willing to just ramble anything about Cyberpunk. So
and I was trying to say that but forgot how to use my words all of a sudden. I don't know what happened.
Yes, so check out Cyber Nation Uncensored Discord. We do have a channel there. We love feedback. By all means, come there. If you're watching this on YouTube, leave some comments. I try to check out the comment section there to answer anybody. But yeah.
If you have suggestions for topics, upcoming shows, throw those down there as well. We love to rant.
Yep. So we're going to be off for, I think, 2 weeks because this is one of those months where we have 2 Wednesdays at the end of the month. So we broadcast the first and third Wednesday of every month. The first Wednesday, we kind of ad lib what topic we talk about, but the third Wednesday, we will go into a deep dive of the old supplements of Cyberpunk, just like we did tonight, and come check us out. Talk to you everyone later.
Have a good night.